Welcome to the Riverfront Bengals Show, a weekly podcast that discusses the week that was and the week that will be in the Cincinnati Bengals nation, and also the very show that some folks are claiming to be the 9th most dangerous podcast in the island nation of Malta. I'm your host, Nate Dotson, and that handsome devil over there is my co-host, Joe Farsing. And Joe, well, man, that just plain sucked. Give me one thing that comes to mind when I say the words, the Bengals lost to the Browns in Week 8 by a score of 32-13.
Pain. Just pain. Sadness.
Yeah, it was not great. There's unfortunately too much to talk about. I thought we were done with this, but unfortunately we are not. But before we get too far down that rabbit hole, please, if you don't mind, hell, even if you do mind, go give us a like, follow, subscribe, whatever it is on wherever you consume this podcast. It helps, I swear. And Joe and I will forever be in your debt. But enough about that. Let's jump right into Week 8.
If you subscribe in the next 2 days, Nate will be a personal DoorDash delivery person. I don't care where you live. Ooh. I don't care what you order. He will deliver your pizza, sushi, whatever.
You heard it here first. The crazier the order, the better.
Yeah, there we go. Multiple stops. Stop at Walgreens, stop at Target, and get some sushi.
I love it. I'm in. I will absolutely do that. All right, quick recap. It was a weird game from the jump when a promising opening drive ended with a Myles Garrett tip pass leading to an interception after 9 plays of 59 yards. Not to be outdone, the Browns marched down and thought that missing a field goal was a good idea, and Jacoby Brissett later threw a pick of his own en route to a scoreless first quarter, and things went downhill quickly from there. The second quarter saw a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and a field goal from Cleveland, and then a fumble and missed field goal from Cincinnati. The score was 11-0 at the half. And unfortunately, the Halloween spookiness did not stop there. Lou and Arumo's defense had their consecutive second halves without a touchdown, allowed streaks snapped on the opening drive of the third quarter. I'm not going to lie to you, that's about the time that I turned off the TV and yelled at my dog. Just kidding. I don't have a dog yet, and even if I did, I would never yell at him. He's such a good boy. Cleveland added another touchdown in the third to go up. Sorry, I gotta make sure this is true. They scored a touchdown to go up 25-0 as they used Nick Chubb in the run game to drain the clock. A couple garbage time TDs to T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd accounted for all the scoring Cincinnati would see. And when the dust settled, well, they simply got their butts kicked in every facet of the game by a Browns team that entered the day a home underdog. It sucked. I hated it. I hated myself after eating all the leftover Halloween candy. It was just a rough evening. Joe, how do you feel about what we witnessed on Monday?
Yeah, I somewhere around the third quarter, I became completely numb, and I was relatively sober, so it's not that I was just hammered. Felt like it. It was just a bunch of crap. It was a lot like the home game last year against the Browns. First drive starts out promising. They're moving the ball. Last year was a clean interception, 99-yard return by Denzel Ward. This was a fluke. Myles Garrett makes a great play. He tips it, and then free ball, and then they pick it off. Go down the field, block field goal. Okay, cool, nothing hurt. Bengals then offense reverted to early season form, 3 and out, check down, check. Jonah Williams became an absolute turnstile. We'll get into a lot more of that later. The huge turning point of this game, 8-0. Bengals are driving, end of the second quarter. They tried 40. I forget the exact length of the field goal. It was relatively makeable. I'll pull it up here really quickly.
Definitely makeable when you consider how we have pretty much christened Evan McPherson to be the heir apparent to Justin Tucker.
Yeah, we might want to pull those comparisons back a little bit after this week. He missed a 47-yard pretty badly. Gave them enough time to drive down, kick field goal themselves. Instead of 8-3 game at the half, 5-point lead, it's suddenly 11-0. Mm-hmm. Second half again, the 7-game scoreless second, touchdownless second half that went up in smoke. They gave up 3 scores. They got absolutely just obliterated. then it's 18-0, and then it's, well, let's just get this game over with. So
yeah, not a lot you can do at that point. So let's just jump into peeling back some layers real quick. We'll start with the defense as we usually do. They gave up 440 yards to an offense led by Jacoby freaking Brissett. Brissett went 17 for 22 for 278 yards and a touchdown. That's 12.6 yards per attempt for those keeping track at home. I mean, Cleveland ran 69 plays to the Bengals 50. It was the most points that they have allowed since week 13 of last year. And the thing that surprised me the most was that, the Cleveland is heralded as a strong run team. That was what we were most concerned about. And they only allowed 3.9 yards per rush, and they still got thrashed. What did you see on the defense? What was the most alarming thing that jumped out to you?
Even before Chido went hurt, and we'll touch on that. I mean, Chido's now lost for the year with the torn ACL. There were guys open all over the middle. I think that's kind of the reason why they were able to hold the run game down, is because they had more guys committed, which meant linebackers were up, safeties were back, and there was just a huge gap in the middle of the field. Just finding, especially on third down, they were finding guys for long plays. And pass defense just ended up being a sieve. Unfortunately, we're finding out how the lack of depth across the board, especially on the defense, in the secondary. It's to the point to where we're hoping Eli Apple is healthy. Oh, and if you're hoping Eli Apple is healthy for,
don't do that to me.
PJ Walker of all quarterbacks, that's not saying, that's not a great indictment of where your team is depth-wise in the backfield. So it was, again, I mean, Cleveland averages 4.6 yards a carry. They held them pretty well under that mark. So everyone was talking about how they were going to get gashed on the run. If you listen to the TV analysis and just on social media, which stay the hell off social media, they're like, the run defense was terrible. And it really wasn't. They had a lot of plays, negative yards, 1 yard, stuff for no gain. They didn't have a huge 40, 50, 60 yard game that they got that Nick Chubb normally has. I mean, he's still got a couple big runs, but it wasn't a huge explosive game. They didn't need it. So kind of the opposite happened of what you thought would happen. They still got 172 yards on the ground because they were able to run it 44 times, but nowhere near as efficient as.
Yeah, when you're up by 1,000 points for the entire game, at least the entire second half, of course you're going to run the ball. But if you'd have told me going into this week that at the end of the day that Cincinnati was going to hold it at 3.9 yards per rush, I'd be like, oh, that means that Cincinnati probably won. That's a really good sign. And it turns out not only was it not a good sign, it didn't matter at all. So rough day for the defense. I guess what really hurts the most about that was that the defense had sort of been the one constant of this season. The offense has had its ebbs and flows. We thought that they had figured something out, and broken out last week. And the defense is, they bent a lot, but they had not broken. Well, they broke.
It's broken. So it's very broken.
We'll get into it more. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's the exact opposite. They were starting to get hit on the run pretty good the last few weeks. Even Atlanta didn't run the ball great, but New Orleans ran the ball all over with DJ Reader out. And you're like, well, the pass defense is going to hold up. You've got a good pass rusher. You've got decent push on the other side, and you've got good corners. Well, pass rush really was non-existent. I think they had 1 sack total. Not a lot of pressures. I mean, the best pressures or the best push they were getting was from Von Bell and Mike Hilton coming off the edge on quarterback and safety blitzes. So,
yeah, it was. I don't know. It was deflating, to say the least. Is that even a word? As I was saying,
no.
I wasn't sure. Listen, I'm a hillbilly. We don't say real words. I'm not real good at saying words around here. Speaking of words, I don't want to say. The offense also stunk. Joe Burrow was completely outplayed by Jacoby freaking Brissett, who I don't think we can just call him Jacoby Brissett. It's like Jacoby freaking Brissett.
Yeah.
Joe looked like he was being haunted out there. I mean, sorry for the Halloween cliches, but he was seeing ghosts. He looked rushed. He never looked comfortable I won't say from the opening snap, because for the most part in that first drive he did. But as soon as Myles Garrett got to him that first time, he never looked comfortable again. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd just decided that getting open wasn't something they were going to prioritize until it was too late. Joe Mixon was equally as mediocre as he's been all year against a team that opens up like Moses is in the Red Sea against the run. I think we all thought that Joe Mixon had a chance to at least have a good game. I don't know. He was also atrocious in the pass block again. And Joe, I didn't see any of the RPOs that worked so well last week. Can you explain that to me? What the hell happened?
There's a lot I can't explain. The most important stat, I think, when it comes to the passing game is T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, the two big cogs, especially with Jamar down, had 11 total targets. Joe Mixon
brought that up.
Yeah, Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine had 12, which means it wasn't even catch. Not like he's throwing contested balls. It's he stopped looking. Pretty much from the first, Garrett got the tip for the interception, and then on the next drive he sacked. Absolutely just whipped Jonah Williams, sacked him. He quit look like he was sped up so fast in his mind that he quit looking downfield. It was immediate. Take 3 steps, turn to your right, and flip it out to the flat to Mixon for a 3-4 yard gain. Mixon has no explosiveness, so it's pointless. It's frustrating that one player, Garrett on one Bengals player, they kept lining him up. They moved him all over, but he was over top of Williams a lot. That completely just took him out of their game, and that shouldn't happen. I mean, there are plenty of great players that you can neutralize them, or at least keep them from completely ruining the game. And usually, you're able to do that. And with an offense that supposedly is dynamic and as varied as the Bengals, that's not something that should ever be an issue. RPOs and screen game and running straight at Garrett, those are the ways to keep him off balance, to keep him from running straight upfield. And they didn't do any of this. So I don't understand the game plan. It's they completely just turtled up.
If you would have told me that Joe Burrow had 35 passes in an offense that did not feature Jamar Chase, I would have assumed that probably 20 of those would have gone to T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
But no, they were going elsewhere. And I mean, even Hayden Hurst wasn't getting utilized in a way that made sense to me. Did you see anything with the way they were using Hayden?
And I've got a note on here. It's interesting to see his usage versus what Uzama's was, because Uzama they ran him a lot on these seam routes down the middle of the field, and Hurst is a better pass catcher, a better route runner, faster, and they just seem to use him over the middle or on short stuff, kind of to the sticks. This would have been the game where you think that he'd be able to feast on that, because he's going to be against linebackers. And they're going to be doubling up on the other receivers because they don't, you don't have Chase. So you can double the other two guys. You can find bigger gains. And he had 4 targets, 4 catches, 42 yards. And a lot of that was on a 21-yard catch that actually they did, he did get downfield, leak downfield a little bit. So I wish that they would use that more. When everyone's around, it's not as needed. But I don't understand why they don't even throw that route, just to give the defense another thing to look at, give them, another spot to cover.
I was confused because it seemed like when they learned that Jamar Chase was not going to play, obviously it was a shock to everybody. We weren't necessarily expecting this after he had such a huge game last week. They didn't change the offense at all. It's like they ran the exact same offense, just didn't have anyone in the Jamar Chase role. And every Bengals fan loves to talk about how they have 3 wide receiver ones. I've never been of that mindset. If they had 2 wide receiver ones, I thought that T. Higgins is a legit wide receiver one. I have yelled about that on this podcast multiple times. If you think that you have 3 wide receiver ones, or even 1 and Tyler Boyd is an overqualified wide receiver 3, why didn't you utilize them in different ways? I hate using this excuse about Zac Taylor and play calling and creativity. But it was just like the offensive line arguments for the first several weeks. Like, I'll stop harping on it when it stops being an issue. The play calling was boring.
Yeah, uninspired.
It was vanilla. It was flaccid, which I find to be a hilarious way to describe just about anything that is not great. I don't know, man. It was like the defense was bad. They weren't put in the best position. They started out pretty strong, and then bad luck just kind of happened. The offense had one good drive that ended in a fluky pick, and it never looked good again until the game was out of hand. I don't know how to explain it. I've been reading all the articles. I've been following all the beat writers. I even had to get on Twitter, which is never a good idea. And I've got nothing. I have nothing in the way of a good answer other than this might just be how this team is. They are inconsistent. They are confused about their identity. And once they kind of thought they found it, they lost Jamar Chase and they got lost again. I don't know.
Yeah, they're incredibly stubborn with their usage of game plans, with their usage of players, and it's just exhausting. Another player that, again, like that they brought up Trenton Irwin, so they had Trenton Taylor, Trenton Irwin, and Mike Thomas to be the third wide receiver, and none of those guys offer anything. I like Trenton Taylor; he's a decent punt returner. He's a wide receiver 4 or 5. Trenton Irwin is this generation's Jeff Query. Look him up, folks.
It's literally not what you want to be called.
Yeah, and Mike Thomas he's a special teamer. I mean, these guys are all just special teamers. And again, and like I said at the top, it exposes the lack of depth. A lot of the insiders have kind of been screaming like they need, even in the offseason, around draft time, they're screaming they need another wide receiver. They need to draft one late or, try to get a more high priority one, UFDA. And they got a couple guys that they looked great in preseason, and Kwame Lassiter, who's still on the practice squad, and Kendrick Pryor, was that his first? I forget what his first name is, but he was plucked off the practice squad by Jacksonville, I believe. But those were guys that just happened to flash during camp. These weren't guys that they were expecting anything from. So injuries happen. You can't expect your top 3 wide receivers to not get hurt, and they had clearly had no contingency for that. The trade deadline came and gone, and they made no moves as expected. But again, it's frustrating.
Frustrating is certainly the word of the week. I mean, I really thought that we were trending up after not just last week, but last week and the second half of week 6.
Yeah.
And now we're back to this very sort of confused, in flux nature. Yeah, we still think this team has all the talent in the world, has all the opportunity, but they got a really hard schedule coming up, and the people that they are vying for playoff spots with are not in quite as bad of a position. So the week sucked, but it's over. It's behind us. But we do still need to give out some awards. So let's jump right into our Olivia Newton-John Studs of the Week.
Tell me about it, Stud.
I still can't get over the John Travolta. I'm sorry. I
will never understand your hatred for the incredible movie Grease, or how much I love Olivia Newton-John. But we digress.
She's fine. Anyway, top of the top list for who actually had the interior of the offensive line actually played really well, especially Cordell Volson. We've been harping on Cordell Volson all season, just kind of not harping, but waiting to see him kind of get in line with the rest of the guys on the line, and I think he's done it. He was the highest graded regular offensive player. Chris Evans was higher. Chris Evans played 2 snaps, so that doesn't count. He had good grades in both pass blocking and run blocking. Also, Alex Kappa and I was going to say Alex Karras. Alex Karras is George from Webster. His nephew, Ted Karras, both really, really solid as well. Neither of them allowed any pressures on all the pass snaps and on all the snaps that they performed against. So the interior of the line is playing like you hope they would. Edges are another story, but we'll see how that turns out. Other player that played really, really well was Jesse Bates. He's been kind of just plugging along. He's been okay. You would kind of hope that he'd have a more explosive season, considering he's playing for a long-term contract for somebody. I mean, Bengals aren't going to pay him, but he played a huge role in the run game. He had a 90.3 grade against the run, 4 stops. The stop, for according to the PFF's grading scale, a stop is a play that the offense would consider a fail. So a short gain, an incomplete pass, pass defended, something like that. He had 4 tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage, and was kind of all over the place. I think he had 12 total tackles. So he had a really good game.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Jesse Bates. He did have a great game, and he was generally just flying all over the field. One of the few guys that you can say was doing everything he could to try to keep the Bengals in the game. Those are really the only guys that are worth mentioning, but I'm going to throw out a different stud. My stud is Chris Evans, and I am literally only including him so that we can briefly touch on how somehow, after a 26-yard completion on the very first drive, with the offense struggling the rest of the game, when you're getting absolutely nothing in any facet of the offense, why didn't they try using this guy more? I'm sure there's a perfectly good reason why he doesn't out-snap the other dudes, but not even trying when he's the only guy who really did anything and only giving him 2 snaps in the entire game. It's baffling to me, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I don't get that. It's Zach always has answers when he's asked about him. He says the opportunities just weren't there for him to be in. And then he went out and noted his lack of performance in preseason games. He's running behind second and third stringers. Also, he had 3 long plays taken away by penalties, again, in preseason games. This is a guy who's done well. Okay, you don't trust him running the ball. Have him out there run routes. With Chase not being out there, he's close to the same size as Chase. He's like only a couple inches shorter. He's stocky. He's strong. He can run routes like a wide receiver. He's dynamic with the ball.
Is he worse than Trent Taylor? Is he worse than that other guy that you mentioned I didn't even know until this week?
Shaggy Trent Irwin?
Shaggy Trent Irwin.
You
can't give me the argument that there weren't opportunities. You're the coach. Create opportunities for your dynamic players. There's this weird sort of epidemic going on in the NFL where I feel like head coaches are trying to prove their worth so that they don't just trot out their best players. Yeah. Maybe sometimes you need to stop worrying about executing your vision for the offense, especially when that vision is very clearly not working, and put these other guys, these dynamic players, in positions to succeed.
Well, and if you're just going to use him out of the backfield, he can't be any worse of a pass blocker than Joe Mixon.
Literally. Can't be worse.
A ghost couldn't be any worse of a pass blocker than Joe Mixon. He's just so much more of a dynamic receiver than P. Ryan and Mixon. Again, they've been hyping him up since his college days. He runs routes and catches balls like he's a wide receiver. He can work on a cornerback or a safety, much less, God forbid, they put, when he's out there, they had him covered with a linebacker. He absolutely roasted the linebacker. The game last year against Detroit when he got a touchdown pass, he absolutely whipped that linebacker like he was a rented mule. I mean, it was awesome just to see someone run a route just that sharp. And they can't find a space for him when they're getting no production out of the backfield. He's not going to get put in. Zach keeps coming up with excuses that, basically it's clear that he's not a part of this team's vision on offense. So quit bitching about it because it's not going to happen.
One of my favorite takes is the decision you're making as a coach what the other team wants or does not want? And if you're paying any attention to Cleveland Browns Twitter, they were also wondering why Chris Evans wasn't more involved.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do what you want to do with that information. But where there are duds, there must also be studs. No, sorry, where there are studs, there must also be duds.
There were a lot of duds.
Yes! Randy Watson! That boy is good. Mm-hmm. Good and terrible.
Sorry, I can't get enough of that clip.
I wish we could find a way to pass the scene where they're passing the money plate around, and one of and he puts a chicken bone in it. Oh Lord, I love.
We want to keep this episode under an hour, so let's instead of listing off every dud one by one, let's just highlight some particularly Dudley folks.
Captain Dudley Do-Right himself is Jonah Williams. 32.2 pass blocking grade, which is actually a lot higher than I expected. I was thinking single digits. Everyone remembers the Andy Dalton like 0 point or the 0-2 passer rating game against the Browns years ago. I was expecting a 0-2 pass blocking grade. Browns had 5 sacks. He gave up 3 of them. He's regressed. I'm hoping that this is the cause, that he's still feeling the effects of a dislocated kneecap. He looks foolish anytime someone breaks out a spin move. It's like he's never seen it before. He played on national championship teams in Alabama and the SEC, where these elite pass rushers come from. And you try to bull rush him and he holds up, and you get someone who's got a nice spin move, and the best pass rushers have all these, have these bag of tricks. They can do any move, and he's just going to get beaten consistently. And it's just, when you have a guy like Garrett who they move wherever they find your weakness, they're going to keep him on him. They're going to keep him on him and just beating you. Again, 3 sacks, several more pressures. The batted, I don't know if you can really blame him for the batted ball that turned in the interception, but Garrett was rushing in front of Williams and he couldn't keep his hands down. So,
yeah, I'm not going to get mad at Jonah Williams for not outplaying Myles Garrett. But there were snaps when he was not lined up against Myles Garrett, and he still – it's like he was just looking down. He kept looking down at his feet when the ball was snapped, and then he would look up as the defender was going by him.
Yeah.
It was you mentioned that he's potentially regressing, and man, I hope it's just him fighting through the injury, because we have certainly lauded him in previous weeks for fighting through that and doing whatever he can to get out on the field, and that's admirable for sure. But he was a sieve. It was obvious, and I mean, if he's that hurt, get off the field. Yeah. And we're not talking about Cordell Volson, who played in a second-tier league against second-tier competition. This is not that. And this guy's been around for a few years. It was really, really bad day from Jonah. I like Jonah. I'm not calling for him to be replaced, but they certainly and inarguably need better out of that position.
Well, and even on a play where they when they sent help, Pirine came over and chipped him. Williams ran into Pirine on the chip, and then Garrett spun right around him and just walked right into Burrow and sacked him for a loss on 3rd down. Like, you've got help and you run into your help. Maybe Pirine was supposed to be more wide. I don't think Pirine was supposed to be more wide, because then Garrett could have had a shoot. I don't know. It looked bad. It was bad. End of story.
I will say about Samaje Pirine, great beard. Love the beard game, Samaje.
Great day.
You got another dud for us?
Yeah, Joe Mixon, 15 touches, a grand total of 59 yards. Again, we know he's been struggling running the ball. A lot of that it could be attributed to scheme and the blocking. He got a little better for a couple weeks. In the last 2 weeks, it's been kind of back to just slow-footed Joe, not making decisive cuts. 7 catches for 32 whole yards, and that's when they are looking at him for the primary option. He's not making guys miss. Pass blocking just god-awful. Gave up another sack right up the gut, just didn't pick up the guy. And those are the killers. You want to be in there for a 3-down back. I mean, that's his thing. He doesn't want to be taken off the field. You got to block somebody or make somebody miss when you catch the ball. And that's, again, back to Chris Evans. That's why it's so infuriating. He's not getting any reps. Why? Because he's not as good of a pass blocker as what you want picking up a blitz. Guy you're paying, that's got $11.4 million cap hit, can't do that anyway, and he can't make anybody miss, and he's not dynamic in the passing game.
Here's very specifically how difficult it would be for Chris Evans to be worse pass blocking than Joe Mixon. Joe Goodberry had an awesome stat. Well, awesome is terrible. He said Joe Mixon ranks 65th out of 67 backs with a pass blocking grade of 24.3. He leads the entire NFL with 3 sacks allowed. His elusive rating, which means how many defenders he makes miss, is now down to 51st out of 54 on the offensive side. His yards after contact, average of 2.05 yards, now ranks 53rd of 54 backs in the NFL. There are only 32 teams. So he's worse than almost every team's backup.
Yeah. And this happens, guys. Running backs have the shortest span of any position. So this isn't unprecedented, but that's why you have depth in your depth on your roster. You have Samaje Perine, who, while not as dynamic, he's going to run. He's going to hit the hole hard and go through it. If there's 5 yards to be made, he's going to get those 5 yards. He's going to pick up that blitz. Mm-hmm. He's going to do the right things. He's at least reliable. Or throw the wild card out there right now. I mean, they're not in desperation mode. I mean, the season isn't over. They have things that needs to get fixed. They have a bye week coming up. They've got important guys coming back off of injury within the next few weeks. So they're still in okay shape. Like, there's a huge middle ground of the AFC, so I'm not worried about them being completely out of the playoff picture. But try something else. Mixon isn't working. This is his 6th year in the league. His cap hit this year is 11.4. Next year it goes up. You can cut him and save $7 or $9 million on the cap next year if you release him in the offseason. Do it and draft some guy in the 2nd round. The Bengals have drafted in the 2nd round running backs. Corey Dillon, Gio Bernard, Jeremy Hill. Never mind the fumble against Pittsburgh. He was a solid running back for a couple years. Joe Mixon. Like, you can get good running backs in the 2nd round. You got Rudy Johnson in the 4th round one year. Like, you don't need to draft. Like, you can get production from some of these guys that are coming on off the street and they're putting up better numbers than Mixon. You don't have to cut them right now, but sideline them, mix someone else in just to mix it up to get some production out of it because you're getting nothing, and you're still feeding them the ball a lot. You're checking down to a guy that can't make someone miss, and he still makes bad drops. He still doesn't have the best hands.
Yeah, if he was going to have a big game, this was it. Cleveland is horrible against the run, and he could do nothing. And you've brought up this plenty of times. I've been a little bit hesitant. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I can do that. He is passing up openings to try to break big plays 4 or 5 or 6 times a game, it seems like. Like, there's a hole there where he could get his 4 or 5 yards, and instead he tries to cut it outside and do something else. Next thing you know, it's 0 to 2 yards. And this happens over and over, time and time again. I don't understand it. I don't know what the thought process is there.
He doesn't have the speed to do it anymore.
So just hit the opening that they give you.
Take 3 yards instead of 0.
The offensive line is not playing poorly anymore in the run.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate it. I think Joe Mixon's very good, but something is not right. I don't know if he's lost a step or something's just not clicking, but it has to get figured out. I don't think they can run away from this problem anymore. One more dud that I want to mention is just I almost feel bad doing it, but Mike Thomas. Going into this game, we were all hoping that Thomas would step up in Ja'Marr Chase's absence. We certainly didn't expect a superhuman effort by any means. Just something adequate, a couple chain-moving catches, anything extra, anything really good from him would have been a bonus. Instead, we got 24 snaps, a 43.9 offensive rating, and at least 1 drive, kill, and drop. Not great, Mike. Not great.
One target the entire game. Like, that's the only pass that he saw all game. On 24 snaps. I mean, if you can't get open, and it's not as if it's not as if they're force feeding T or Tyler Boyd the whole game. If you can't get open more than once in 24 snaps, what are you doing out there?
Yeah, I hate that we have to have a conversation about the wide receiver 4, but if the guy literally isn't good enough to get open on an NFL field as the 4th most covered receiver, then I guess we have to have a conversation. So
that's with their top cornerback out too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's try to have some fun here. And if the only fun that we have are in the clips that we play, I'm going to throw out our Bold strategy, Cotton. Worst call of the week.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Spoiler alert. Don't see it playing off for him. Eagles did absolutely nothing. Deadline. This was expected, really, albeit not what we wished for. But Duke Tobin and the Bengals did absolutely squat at the trade deadline. In one of the most active deadlines ever, by the way. With an injury-depleted roster, a team searching for answers. I guess they just didn't see any opportunities that they liked, and they chose to trot out the same crew for the rest of the season. On one hand, maybe they're looking at a longer window and don't think this team is built for a Super Bowl run. I don't know. On the other hand, anything can happen in this league. See the 2021 AFC playoffs, for reference. But when you have a shot to make a run, me thinks you should take it. Crazy. I know. I would love for this hot take to age terribly while the squad gets healthy and wins the whole damn thing. I am not feeling too good about those chances today. Any thoughts on them doing diddly at the deadline?
I completely expected. They've made 2 in-season trades, I think, in their history. First one was Carson Palmer when he was retired. They ended up fleecing the Raiders, but the only reason they did that is because they literally got something for nothing. If he was going to stay retired, then he wasn't going to give him anything. The other one was Carlos Dunlap when he was literally sabotaging the team by listing their depth chart on social media, listed his house on social media. I mean, he did everything. He complete jackass. He was a great Bengal, but you hate seeing, dude, don't be an asshole. Anyway, they hold on to their
practice what you preach, Joe.
Yeah. Why? That's why I'm here, not on the field. They hold on to their draft picks, and along with another team that has a familiar why response, the Packers, more than any other team. They do not want to give up draft picks unless it's for more draft picks or moving up a few, if there's someone that they target in the draft. I think that's foul. I think that's a bad play right now. This year and next year are the last years that Burrow's going to be relatively reasonably priced. He's going to be extended in this offseason. His big money isn't going to happen until 24. He'll have a big raise for next year, but it's not going to be the full 50 million, whatever the hell he's going to end up getting per year. These are the 2 years you need to take advantage of. And your number one cornerback just went down. I get he went down at 9:00 on Monday and you have 19 hours to make, to try to find a trade, but there's not a depth guy. So you're not having to play, Trey Flowers out there or move your rookie safety who can't make the field. You can't get him on the field. Try to make Dax Hill learn how to play outside cornerback. There's someone out there that they could have thrown a 5th or 6th round pick and, pick on. So
that's it. Yeah. That's it for me. Exactly. Like I said, we didn't expect them to make any moves, but let's not pretend that Cincinnati is a franchise that has this storied history of consistent success where they're in the playoffs every season and we just need to trust the process. The window is here. Just like you said, Joe Burrow is cheap. T. Higgins is cheap. Jamar Chase is cheap. That ends up not being true really soon. The most luxurious asset you can have in the NFL.
All of pro sports
is a quarterback on a rookie deal. Skill positions on rookie deals. So you do every single thing you can. They did it in the offseason. They got some good players. In a year where the AFC is wide open, sure, the Bills are the favorites. They're the prohibitive favorites in the entire NFL.
Absolutely.
But they're not a powerhouse that's going to go undefeated. I think Cincinnati has the firepower if everything is clicking and they're reasonably healthy come playoff time to really make a run. And the fact that they not only did nothing, I'm not getting any rumblings that they really tried to do much is,
they wouldn't have.
I don't know, at least a little bit frustrating.
Well, that's the thing. You're only one injury away God forbid something happened, and I'm not wishing this because love watching Josh Allen play, but if he gets hurt, if he hurts his knee, or if Pat Mahomes hurts his knee, it's completely wide open. I mean, all it takes is one injury. And if you're not going to make a move to try to make sure that you're there when everyone else is, it's just disheartening. It's again,
That was it.
It's you're making us trust you when what do you really have for us to go back on and trust? Everything is they don't want to sacrifice the future. There's never been there's never been a present that's been worth it in 50 some odd years. You know, I mean, you can't keep looking for the future. Teams are not devaluing draft picks, but they're using draft picks to try to, I mean, look what the Rams did last year.
Teams are devaluing. I think you can say that.
Yeah.
The Rams said, we don't give a crap about draft picks.
Yeah.
Let's go win a Super Bowl.
And they're showing the after effects this year because they're not playing real well. But guess what? They got a ring.
I would be happy
they got
being a garbage franchise for the next 5 to 7 years if it got a Super Bowl win.
Yeah. Look at the Marlins in baseball. They won 2 titles, blew the whole thing up the very next year both times. Who gives a shit? They got titles.
Well, let's stay in Miami. What did they do in the trade deadline?
Yep, they went out and got help on the defense.
They literally saw that there is a reasonable chance that they could win a playoff game against the top teams in the AFC. This is a Miami team that I don't think anybody who listens to this podcast is going to just blatantly claim is far superior to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But their brass decided, oh, man, we have a chance here. We could do this. Let's go get some guys and try to make a run at this thing.
Oh, that's funny. They did it smart because the draft picks that they traded for they traded to move up to get Waddle. They traded for Tyreek Hill, and they traded to get Chubb. Were all picks that they received by trading away a draft pick. They traded with San Francisco for San Francisco to move up and get Trey Lance. So I mean they've been smart and shrewd with it, but
you can actually dial that back a little bit. That originated with the Laramie Tunsil.
Oh, that's yeah.
This is a long play for them, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think the lesson to be learned is that if there's a window, you have a chance.
Nothing's guaranteed.
Just
try to win now.
Just go for it.
You don't know what's going to happen. Like you don't, someone could all of a sudden retire. Someone could get hurt. A career-ending injury. If you have an opportunity in front of you, go for it. It's just wait for next year, or we don't want to give away the future. Our window is now. Screw next year. Win now.
Yeah.
You have a chance. You have a good team that if you got a couple pieces, if you got a cornerback, like you don't even need to go out and get a wide receiver. Like I understand them not getting a wide receiver, trying to find someone off a scrap heap because it's only going to be a few weeks. You're not going to sign Odell Beckham Jr., who's not even going to be ready for a few weeks. That they're going to go to the bench as soon as Jamar Chase is back on the field. So I'm fine with them not getting a wide receiver, but not trying to get a cornerback when your top cornerback is lost for the year means that you're okay thinking that you're punting on, like you're okay with the fact thinking that you might miss out on the playoffs because of this. Like they're not dumb enough to know, or they're not dumb enough to not realize how huge of a hit not having Chido is. They know how big of a hit it is. And they're okay with that just being replaced by sliding Eli Apple over into the one spot or Taylor Britt, whatever, just shuffling the decks after that. They're okay with having that huge drop off.
Well,
that's a lot.
Yeah. And this is a perfect segue into our next segment. Let's let Billy Madison take it away.
Well, Billy, if you spell this correctly, you pass 2nd grade.
Couch. C. Cow. C-O-R. Are you going to the mall later? That's what I'm asking.
No, I am not going to the mall. Keep spelling, mister.
C-O-U-C-H.
Correct.
I am the smartest man alive!
I will never tire of playing that video clip on here, so I apologize for everybody who's going to have to listen to that almost every week for the rest of the season. The Billy Madison, I'm the smartest man alive, good call of the week I'm going a different direction this week, Joe. Typically, this segment acknowledges actual good calls. But if you've seen the cinematic masterpiece, Billy Madison, you're surely aware that Billy is, in fact, not the smartest man alive. So I'm going to recognize a call that someone, somewhere, must think is a good one. But I feel they're sorely mistaken. And that's whoever the hell keeps trotting Kevin Huber out there. Huber has a, wait for it, 56.5 PFF rating.
Is that good?
That's good. It's good. It's good for dead last out of every single first-string punter in the National Football League. It's time to get Drew Chrisman on the field. I'm no football scientist, but it seems like having the better players out there is a good idea. I don't know. But Huber has contributed negative value to the team multiple weeks in a row, and it's gotten out of hand. I don't know. What say you?
I think the only reason that he's still around is because Clark Harris is no longer there. I think if Clark Harris, and I understand long snapper, punter, whatever, but I think if Clark Harris were there and they'd have more, fluidity, there'd be a lot more. Totally spaced out on the word, but you'd have someone who's a lot more experienced as a long snapper. They'd be more willing to go with the inexperienced holder. Because right now they've got Adamitis, and he's fine. But he had a couple snaps that were kind of iffy last week, and
Strong
they
name.
still want someone. Yeah, they want someone who's at least reliable holding on field goals and extra points. And maybe Drew Chrisman sucks at it, or I think more than anything else, they're sticking with the devil that they know instead of the devil they don't. Because his punting's a liability. It's been that way for several years. It was progressively worse through the latter half of last season in the playoffs, and this year he's just god awful. And he needs to step aside. He's got the record for most games played in the Bengals uniform. Congratulations. Now go home.
Yeah, you did it. We appreciate your service. Thank you for everything you've done for the franchise. But at this point, I don't get it. I mean, bad field position over and over and over again is a problem. And I don't know. Well, whatever. They'll figure that out, I hope. So let's get to some awards, shall we?
Let's shall.
Joe, you've chosen one of the most rewatchable films ever for your award. Let's play the clip.
You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow. I hate to die.
I was over 20 years old before I saw that movie. I thought it was just some like sappy chick flick. It was my wife's favorite movie, and she turned me on to it. And God bless her, that is one of the best damn movies I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, for those that don't know, it's The Princess Bride. That goes to Myles Garrett and Jonah Williams. You can just imagine lining up for the first snap of the game, Myles Garrett saying, "You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you." And Jonah Williams responding, "You seem a decent fellow. I hate to die." And he died anyway.
I think you understood the nature of this segment better than it's ever been understood or will be understood again. That was too perfect. He was overmatched, and he had a bad game. He had a terrible, abysmal game. But hey, we can at least make fun of him through 9-second video clips.
Inigo Montoya and The Man in Black.
I was also pretty late before I saw that movie. And listen, if you haven't seen it, folks, not only is it one of the best movies of all time, it's one of the most perfect date movies of all time.
Yeah.
Your girlfriend or wife, partner, non-binary human, they're all going to love it.
See, and I was at the right age to see that movie. That's what I don't understand. I was born in 80, and it came out when I was 6-7 years old. So where the hell was I?
It's better as you age. You get the jokes a little bit better the older you get.
You know what I was watching that year that came out the same year? Spaceballs. That's why I missed it. I was watching too much Spaceballs.
That's why I didn't miss it, because I had not watched any Spaceballs. Makes sense. Well, Joe, this week I'm going to channel one of the greatest movie characters of all time for my award.
How are you feeling?
I'm having a ball. Scrapping and yelling and mixing it up. Loving every minute with this damn crew.
I'm, of course, talking about Royal Tenenbaum himself. The Royal Tenenbaum Scrapping and Yelling and Mixing It Up award goes to Dax Hill, who finally got a chance to play, Joe. Now,
Okay.
let's be fair. He did not have a very good game. While he was solid against the run, the strong tackler, his coverage left much to be desired, at least for this week. But he was only on the field due to Chido Awuzie's injury to begin with, and he ended up with 19
And Trey
snaps. And Trey
And
Flowers. He ended up with 19 snaps, which almost doubled his career total, which leads me to wonder about Lou Anarumo's rant about never, ever cycling defensive backs. I get it. You want continuity. But wouldn't it have been nice if Dax and Cameron Taylor-Britt had some experience? This is the NFL. Injuries happen in this league every stinking week. And sure, hindsight is 20/20, but it feels like getting these guys occasional reps might be a good idea. Let them scrap and yell and mix it up with that crazy crew. Hey, what do I know?
To be fair, CTB was To be fair, CTB was on injured reserve, and he was the week that he was pulled off of IR. They immediately activated him, and he got some snaps in. And Dax Hill's a safety. I mean, he's not a cornerback. He was there. He only got stuck playing because they were down a player to come into the game because of injuries, and Chido and Trey Flowers went out. So I mean, he's not a cornerback, and he was forced into cornerback reps. But you can't be stuck busy with your mouthpiece in your hand at the snap of the ball and then get absolutely roasted because you have to put your mouthpiece in after the snap. Just throw the damn thing on the ground, run. Forget your damn mouthpiece and cover the guy. That looked bad.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look. Perhaps he would have been more prepared if he had actually played in professional football games.
Maybe he'd have more reps putting his mouthpiece in before the snap of the ball.
Maybe. I don't know. But any excuse I get to play the Royal Tenenbaums on this podcast, I'm going to do it because I choose the videos, except when you do.
Yes.
All right. So let's move on. The standings, I've enjoyed this more than I will this week. The Cincinnati Bengals are 4-4. They are a game behind Baltimore, second in the division ahead of the 3-5 Cleveland Browns and 2-6. Dumpster fire that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who beat the Bengals. Importantly, they are 0-3 in the division and are on the outside looking in for the final wild card spot. Season's not over, but I think if you were looking at that schedule before the season started, you would have said, oh, if they can just capitalize on the first 8 weeks, they should be fine when they run the gauntlet for the second 9. They didn't do that.
Yeah, you would have hoped. Look at the schedule. You'd have hoped they'd have been 6-2, 6-3 at worst going into the bye week. But at this point, you would have hoped that they'd be 6-2. Looking at teams that they had ahead of them. Clearly, that hasn't happened. But
yeah, so we're really gonna hope for something good coming up next week. Before we dive into that a little bit, let's get into the injury updates. Obviously, the big one, Chido, torn ACL. Out for the year. I feel like if you were following along on the Twitterverse, you saw Joe or some unnamed anonymous person who runs the Riverfront Bengals show account saying right after the injury happened that it looked bad and he was probably out for the year. Well, turns out it's true. He was having the best season of his career. Pro Bowl caliber year.
Lights out. All pro caliber.
Heart and soul, that defense. That's a huge loss.
Yeah.
It's a devastating, season-changing kind of loss. So we're going to learn a lot about what Lou Anarumo can do without Chido for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Rob Livingston and the other coaches in the secondary. I need to get guys up to speed now.
Yeah. Well, what else did you hear from the pressers about the guys that are banged up?
Eli Apple should be good to go. He's considered day-to-day, but he's looking, I think, I'm not sure. Today was just a walkthrough, so it wasn't a full practice. I didn't see what the actual official practice report was or participation report because it really didn't matter. Trey Flowers is a little behind that. He's day-to-day as well, but they're less optimistic about him playing, which means you might have to, we'll be seeing some of the back half of the defensive back and cornerback room playing this weekend. Thank God that the Panthers don't have a dynamic offensive passing attack. They've got quarterbacks playing pretty well and DJ Moore, but he's one guy. There isn't like there's 3-4 guys that are going to be able to beat your team. So this is get through this week, get to the bye week, let guys heal up. Henderson's banged up. He had the stinger going into the week. He got a back injury on a cheap ass play. I didn't think it was that cheap at first until you realize he got blindsided in the spine. He was getting blocked, and the guard came and just absolutely drove his shoulder and head into the square into the back of Hendrickson. He had to miss a couple snaps. Came back, but he'll be fine. Should be fine. 3 different guys had finger injuries. P. Ryan Hubbard had a really jacked up finger. They had to do X-rays after the game, and I can't remember who the third was. It's rare to see 3 guys listed on the injury report with finger issues, but they should all be fine. So DJ Reader is still not going to be out this week. Hopefully, I think he's on track to play Pittsburgh when they come back from the bye. So,
yeah. Mentioning Trey Henderson is important. I think he's not going to miss time yet, but he has been dealing with a handful of injuries for the last several weeks. So you got to appreciate what he's still doing out there.
He's
barely missing snaps. DJ Reader, I do want to mention that Reader and his foundation, a Son Never Forgets Foundation, announced that they are partnering with Schroeder High School to open the Reader Resource Room. The Reader Resource Room will provide students with essential needs and information that will support student success. So, hey, man, you got to love it when the players are making an impact off the field, even when they can't quite make one on. So, yeah, this has been a mostly negative podcast. So let's pump some positivity into it. DJ Reader, love what you're doing. Thank you for your contribution.
I love DJ Reader. Again, this is a guy who was a pitcher at Clemson while he was a defensive tackle on a national championship team. Threw 95 miles an hour. That's terrifying. A dude that huge, that big, 320 pounds, throwing 95 miles an hour heat coming in and out of the bullpen. That's even more terrifying.
Walk across the lot and pop over into Great American. Where was he in 2021 season when they really needed some bullpen help?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
All right, so next week, the Bengals are playing the Carolina Panthers at home, which we love, at 1 p.m. on Sunday. The Bengals open as 7.5-point favorites. Some key matchups. The one that jumped out to me is Jonah Williams versus edge rusher Brian Burns. Burns is kind of a stud, anchoring Carolina, who sneakily has a top 10 defense. The Rams offered 2 first-rounders for that guy and got told no, if that tells you anything about how valued he is. And as we're watching this game and we're worrying about how the Bengals are going to bounce back, Jonah really cannot afford another disaster of a game like he had this past week.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that. Burns isn't as dynamic as some of the guys that they've come up against. He's not Micah Parsons. He's not Myles Garrett. He's not even Derek Watt. Geez, wow. TJ Watt.
He's definitely not Derek Watt.
Yeah, he's not a fullback who's only on the team because his brother's there. But he's still someone that you have to pay attention to. And please, dear God, do not put Jonah on him. Give him some help. Put the tight end over on that side. Put Samaje into Chip. Just help a brother out. Please.
That's all we can ask. On the defensive side, I think the biggest matchup, at least the one that stood out the most to me, was DJ Moore versus Cam Taylor-Britt. Moore's looked a lot better these last couple of weeks, so could be another big test for CTB. What do you see on the defense?
I'm not as worried. DJ Moore's he's made some spectacular plays. That last play with at the end of the game last week was amazing. That pass,
he was out of the end zone. That should not have been a penalty.
Let the guys be excited. Let the guys be excited. Although it was still a 48-yard extra point, straight in the middle of the field. Make the fucking kick, dude.
Make the kick.
I'm not as worried. Actually, and it's funny because on PFF, DJ Moore is their second highest rated wide receiver. The highest rated wide receiver is a guy you might know his college. A guy went to LSU. Terrace Marshall Jr. played with a certain guy named Jamar Chase, certain guy named Justin Jefferson. He's a few spots higher on their grading scale. Their third guy is 112 out of 113, so I'm not really worried about. Shi Smith is the 112th out of 113 wide receivers graded, so I'm not really worried about the diversity of their passing attack. But they've got a couple decent ones, so you can't just totally, just make sure you get good pass rush, get something up the middle. They still can't get much push up the middle. I hope this is a game. I hope BJ Hill can have a good game. Push that pocket.
He was okay this past week. That blocked field goal was nice.
Yeah, that's special teams. Anything you get on special teams is a benefit.
Those teams are special.
Super special. He's middle of the pack as a defensive interior. He needs to be a little better than that. I mean, they paid him a lot of money to be better than average, and he's been really good in spots, and then he's just been another guy. So
just kind of disappears sometimes. That's true.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything that jumps out to you about this matchup before we move on to some quick predictions?
It's going to be interesting to see how the game plan adjusts. It better adjust. If the Browns defense, who wasn't very good and missing key players, were able to hem the team in, then any team can do that. And Panthers are a decent defense. I'm curious to see if they're going to try to be more creative. Clearly, if you go off of a year and a half and Zac Taylor's comments, don't expect any packages with Chris Evans unless like 5 guys just disappear from the earth, and then maybe he'll put him in the backfield. He'll probably try to pull Icky Woods and his gigantic bee in a bag neck chain in before him. But T and Tyler Boyd weren't winning routes quickly enough. They need to fix that. Like you guys are better than that. Everyone just needs to play better. So I'm just curious to see what the game plan is going to look like in week 2. They saw what didn't work. They saw, you now see how teams are going to treat you without Jamar Chase. So your turn to react. It's a chess game.
Yeah, that's it for me. That's it for me too. Just the one-on-one matchups, Cincinnati wins almost all of them. So just go out there, know that you're better, and be better.
Yeah.
I don't feel good about predicting this game at all. I got Cincinnati winning 23-20. If you would have asked me what I thought this game was going to be after week 7, it would be a lot more lopsided. But I was so discouraged by what I saw last week that I'm just not sure. I got Cincinnati winning. They are the better team. They're at home, which they haven't done a lot of so far. So they're going to win, but I don't know. I don't feel great.
Yeah, I mean, they're not as good as they played against Atlanta. They're not as bad as they played last week against the Browns. Again, I've got a similar game. I got 24-21. They're at home. They've got the better quarterback. They should win, but you got 60 minutes of football to prove it. So who knows?
You can certainly argue that it is a must-win game.
Yeah, if they go into the bye at 4-5, facing the teams that they faced and only coming out with 4 wins, and then seeing the gauntlet ahead of them, then you can start looking at your draft board.
Yeah, you don't want to overreact, but maybe if you're not going to make any moves at the deadline, then tank. No, we're not going there. We're not going there, Joe. I'm sorry I even brought it up.
No.
Let's jump into some quick.
You look at the best left tackles on the board, and you see who's going to be there and pick 16.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So let's jump into a couple quick viewer mail questions before we call it a night. The first one is from our buddy Joey Gaditza. And as always, these questions come from our awesome friends and family on patreon.com/Riverfront Cincinnati, where you too can join the community. We mostly talk Reds, but they let us talk Bengals whenever Joe and I decide that we want to blast the chats.
We make them talk Bengals.
It's a very specific Bengals channel that we now have usurped.
We lead the conversation. No, I lead the conversation where I want to. If I want to talk Bengals, goddammit, we're talking Bengals.
And I also have a separate private channel where people are like, can we talk Bengals without Joe? So you can join that too. And all you have to do is commit a couple bucks a month by joining the Patreon family at patreon.com/riverfrontsitsy. Like I was saying, Joe Gaditza has got the first question, and he asks, hey guys, indeed it was a horror show. I keep wanting to believe that the Bengals are a powerhouse, but are they? Man. I'll bat lead off. The answer is no. They have the talent to be a powerhouse. I might want to adjust that and say they had the talent. Losing Chido really, really hurts, especially with the depth issues. I think they do still have the ability to make a run. They did it last year when they were super healthy. But are they a powerhouse? No. We hoped and prayed that they would be, kind of expected that they might be going into the season, but no, they're barely a 500 team right now.
Yeah, Joe Burrow is below 500 in his career. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. You've got someone who's generational quarterback talent in terms of his arm talent and the ability that he has just mentally, just what how he can process things and as a leader. And he's 16 and 17, I think, career. They're a good team. They're a playoff talent. They're a playoff caliber team. They're not a powerhouse. The Bengals front office, they're too scared. They won't go in to make the appropriate moves, the necessary moves to build a juggernaut, because they want to hold on to these goddamn draft picks for the future that may never come. I mean, Carson Palmer, like that was the guy that, I mean, he had, like, you wanted to build a quarterback in a lab. Boom, there was Carson Palmer with his size, his arm. Like, he was huge. He could throw the ball 70 yards with a flick of a wrist. If God created a quarterback, that's what he would look like. And they had 1 year as a real contender with him. You can't keep planning for a future that may not come. Injuries happen.
Yeah.
Players just don't pan out. Drafts don't plan out.
The style of play changes. I mean,
yeah.
Last year it was the NFL was a pass first offense or pass first league, and this year running backs are arguably the most valuable players in the field. You can't plan for a future if you don't know what that future holds.
Yeah, they're afraid. They don't want to look foolish by going all in or by trading draft. They won't make the moves necessary. They're afraid to make the moves necessary, and it's not even about money because there's a salary cap. They spend more real dollars than most teams. It's just they don't want to put themselves out there. They don't want to risk stuff. They don't want to put themselves in salary cap hell. Do it. Blow up the salary cap in 1 year. Front load everything so that you're going to have to, or backload everything. So you have to cut guys and have a shitty year 1 year because you have $50 million in dead cap. Who gives a shit? You get a ring. Rings, banners last forever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the answer, Joe, is they have the talent to be a powerhouse, but no, they are not.
They have most of the talent to be a powerhouse.
Truth. Next and final question comes from Charlie Zollers. This goes out to Joe. Which loss was more painful for you this week, Joe? UC or the Bengals?
I'm going to look straight into the camera here and just bluntly say, go to hell, Charlie. No, he's a student at UCF, and my Bearcats went down and played like absolute dog shit. They lost the game that they should have been absolutely boat raced in. The only reason that was close is that the Knights fumbled twice in their, in plus territory. They kept them in, but I think UC is a much bigger loss. Bengals are midseason. One loss isn't as catastrophic as they're in. UC still has now they've got to absolutely run the table to reach the AFC champion or the AAC championship game. It's probably going to be on the road. If they do that, they still have a path to be the New York Six or the New Year's Six rep as the highest Group 5 team in the Cotton Bowl again, which was a house of horrors last year. But it's a hell of a lot tougher road than the Bengals have to get into the playoffs. Middle of the road of the AFC is kind of huge, bunched up. If they can get hot, get guys healthy, and make a bit of a run, then they're in good shape.
Yeah, well, the most important thing to take away from that question is, hey, Charlie, Go suck an egg.
Central Florida's got weeks of relevancy in college sports versus the 200 years that UC has been around. So
I love it. All right, well, that's going to just about do it for this week's episode of the Riverfront Bengals Show. Joe, any parting thoughts?
Next, before you see us next, it's election day. Get your asses out there and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Just get your asses out there. No excuses. If you don't vote, you have no right to bitch.
If there is a candidate running on the pro Bengals platform, maybe vote for them. If not, then just weigh all the options and make the decision that works best for you and your family. Joe, I've had a blast. Somehow, we always have a good time. I'm used to having to manufacture good times on the Reds podcast. I don't like it as much on this one, but we do it anyway. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. If you have a moment, please go like us, follow us, subscribe, all that good stuff. I will come and Postmates or DoorDash your Uber Eats order to your house, specifically if it's a weird order. Thank you to everyone so much. For Joe Farfsing, I'm Nate Dotson, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.